IVM.
Hello and welcome to Simplify, the episode which guarantees you will be smarter or we will give you your money back. And if you observe very carefully, we are not charging you any money. So,
That's your
so yeah. So, yes, we are back this week with, sort of a fun topic. And we are missing Chuck, by the way.
Yeah, he's chucked
And,
off.
Yeah. So Chuck is nowhere to be seen because we suspect he's buying some headphone or the other. He's insanely fond of headphones and earphones and things like that. And
I honestly, I can't wait for Chuck to come with his fancy headphones the next time. And producer tell him that, listen, they are not good for recording. I'm really waiting.
Yeah. So I don't. I have my son is also a bit of a headphone file, and he spends a lot of money on headphones, and he keeps. And for the life of me, I cannot tell the difference between like A and B. So if you A/B test all these headphones, and so he keeps telling me that it's because as you grow older, your hearing grows worse. So
I actually at this point have a great anecdote which was told in my agency, and he's so there was a creative guy, and there's a creative guy who is a bit of an uncouth Mangalorean, much like yourself, Naren, and he was he was actually talking to the head of another department. I won't say which department, who was a very, very refined Sardarji gentleman. And he was like, he was like a very clean cut, high, posh man. And this guy is an uncouth fellow. So this dude, the uncouth Mangalorean fellow, has had a tendency to try and pull this guy's leg always for all of his high pleasures of sorts. So one day, our Sardarji gentleman procures a pair of headphones for listening, and the Mangalorean guy finds out. He turns up in his cabin and he's like, "Hey, tu aaj headphone kharida?" कहता है, तू आज earphone खरीदा? He's like, "They're headphones." And he's like, "Hey, मेरे को सुना ना, मेरे को भी सुनने का है." So he takes the headphones and he listens. And he's like, दूसरा गाना बजा ना? He plays something else. Like, इसमें क्या खास है? कितना खर्चा किया तूने इसमें? So he's like, I bought them for their Audio Technica. I paid like 40,000 for them. And इसमें इतना क्या खास है? Like the tones are very good, and it's like the mid ranges are really beautiful and all that stuff. We gave him a full technical explanation. Hey, listen for it. Hey, सुन ना, मेरे को लगता है तेरा इधर काट लिया है लोगों ने. He's like, why would you say that? And he's like, तेरे को अच्छा सुनने का है ना, अपना पगड़ी थोड़ा ऊपर करेगा ना, मस्त सुनाई देगा सब. And this guy then promptly threw him out of his cabin.
Rightly so.
Add to cart.
Yeah. That is the audiophile versus non-audiophile argument. थोड़ा पगड़ी ऊपर करेगा, सब मस्त सुनाई देगा, versus spending 40 grand on a pair of headphones.
So we were talking about people who buy what are they called? Audiophiles, right? So they buy a lot of expensive equipment to listen to music. And the problem is that oftentimes they listen to pretty mediocre music just because it brings out the best in the equipment. So there's a category of music called EDM. I'm sure a lot of our listeners really love EDM, but it's some of it is nice. I'm not saying some of it is not, but a lot of it is really very monotonous, ting ting tang tang kind of thing. And it's brilliant on great headphones, right? And so, as somebody pointed out, an audiophile is a guy who listens to the equipment and not the music.
The logical conclusion to this would be someone buying earphones good enough to make Simplified sound good. So.
Yeah, that would be, yes.
I think that's what Chuck is trying to do. So, anyway, now that we have
Yeah.
sufficiently
Yeah.
offended Chuck and
Yeah, we offended everyone. So
sit on his
apologize. Yeah.
brand new purchase,
Yeah.
let us proceed to the topic of the day, which
Yeah.
is Naren, what are we?
So recently, about a week ago at the time of this recording, Elon Musk did a very funny thing. So Elon Musk, as he's a bit of a hero with all of us at Simplified, because he does and he says and does the wackiest things, and he's all kinds of fun, right? So what Elon Musk did was he asked Twitter. He said that, guys, I need to sell my stock in order to pay my taxes. So do you think, does Twitter think I should sell my shares or not? And about 52% of respondents, 52 or 55% said you should, and 40 whatever the other fraction said no. So he decided to sell his shares, and that made some waves. Now that is mildly troublesome from a SEC point of view. So he is likely to face some kind of investigation from that, because he owns a stock. And if he says that he's going to sell stock or buy stock or do something with his own stock, it affects the price of that stock.
Price of the stock, yeah.
And he is actually selling that. So if he affects the price of the stock as he is selling, then that is under strict ambit of that law. It's a crime, and so they mount an investigation, and I think they try to determine whether there was any intent to benefit from that.
Or is he just a random guy?
But in case of Elon Musk, it was completely random. The reason he was doing this was there was a something which with the press is called a billionaire tax, and Elon Musk himself, even without a so billionaire tax, will get to the billionaire tax proposals in a while. But what happened to Elon Musk was when Tesla, around 2012, he got into Tesla early, 2003 or 2004, and he decided to build this electric car, and he was going on. And by 2012, it was like Tesla had a lot of losses. It had a promising product, but it wasn't really selling much, and there were all kinds of challenges. And the board of directors said that we'll give you some gazillion shares, I think 26 million shares or something, if you meet these milestones. So if you sell so many, and he started getting those milestones year after year. And those stock options started vesting. So he started getting them. And the strike price was at $6 and something. So he could so every year he would get some 2 or 3 million shares, and he could convert them as a stock option, that he could convert them into shares at $6.23 or something.
Right.
And the market price was really high at that time. Right? So it was several $100s at that time. So what Musk, what the US tax law is when your options get converted into shares, or whatever the strike price is. So it's suppose $6.50, and let us say you converted it at $6.50, and that day the market price is, let's say, $100. So you have to pay a tax on the $93.50 that that's the difference. And that is taxed at your tax bracket. So if you're in a very high tax bracket, American taxes are quite high for the higher bracket, and you could do that. So that you can. So they are options, right? So they have a window. So in the case of Elon Musk, they had a window of 10 years, and he could have converted in year 1, or he could have converted in year 10. He chose to convert it in year 10, which is coming up in August 22. And now all that tax liability is going to hit him. So it's something like, so the Tesla share price is in excess of $1,000. So these guys share the tax liability, and it's not just income tax for the United States. He has to pay income tax for the Republic of California also. So California has one state tax. So that's also stiff. That is some 12-13%, and this is some 25-30%. So all put together, sorry.
Yeah, no, but this tax law was always there, right? It's
It
not
was
a
always
new-
there.
It was
Yeah.
always there. Yeah.
But this guy, he took this and he would have to sell it. But he took this occasion to bellyache about what is called a billionaire tax proposal.
Okay.
So now I come to the billionaire.
So
tax.
once again, so
Hmm.
technically he still profited massively, right? Instead of
Yeah.
selling
It's
it at
just
100, he sold it at 1,000. Now he's like,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that, I have to give
he
it.
has some $270 billion.
Yeah. No,
And
I
he-
meant
yeah.
between year 1 and year 10, it made sense for him to
Yeah,
sell. It's not
Yeah.
like he incurred any kind of loss.
No.
In fact, he's made like a monumental.
So actually, among
Really?
Gujarati traders, right? So in Bombay, whenever you have to hand out a part of your profit, that's why Gujarati traders are very practical and pragmatic people. So they understand the concept of marginal costing very well. So let us say you're selling something at 10 rupees, and that gives you a rupee profit. And somebody says, I'll sell it for you at 11 rupees, but out of that extra 10 rupees, extra 1 rupee, I'll take 95 paisa, let us say. So most of us would be, angry. We would be angered. We would say that what nonsense. The product is mine, everything is mine, and you're taking 95% of the extra. But a Gujarati trader says, I was going to make 1 rupee. I'm going to make 1 rupee 5 paisa. Go ahead and do it. So it is called mal pe jakat. So if the Gujarati term for that is mal ke upar jakat. So it's a very good card. So as far as Elon Musk is concerned, it is mal ke upar jakat hai. So it actually he shouldn't feel pissed at all. But Elon Musk is not a Gujarati businessman, so otherwise he would be Elon Bhai Musk. So, so
On
he's
that
very
note, I
upset.
think
Yeah,
take
on
a
that
break.
note, I think we'll take a little break and we'll come back and talk a little more about this
But Elon
billionaire
Bhai
tax
Musk.
and why Elon Bhai Musk is so upset. Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
Yeah, see you soon.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
So welcome back. We were discussing on Elon Bhai Musk's fury at the billionaire tax. And it's not so much fury as irritation. And Musk, when he is irritated or is unhappy, he doesn't keep that secret. He's fairly outspoken about it. He's quite a character actually. And if I quite like him, and a lot of people don't also. But here's the billionaire tax, and if you look at it from the Democrats' point of view, it makes sense. So first, you need to know why they wanted to have a billionaire tax. So
Oh, this is a new one, right? This is
the new one,
tax.
the one which they are proposing. It's probably not going to see the light of day because there is a lack of support from the Democrat side itself. Initially, there was a lot. So what happens is that billionaires, most billionaires in the US, the tech billionaires, they are basically rich because their stocks they keep appreciating in value. And when they started up, they were small. They had a large chunk of the company. Then they expanded, and they have billions of dollars. So Musk is a shining example of that. But there are many other people who are rich because their stock holdings are rich. Bill Gates, all of them. And the thing is that Musk does this, and a lot of other people do it. They don't. If they need any money, they need money, right? They need money to buy themselves a jet or a car or whatever, and they just pledge their shares and take a loan against it. And they spend the money, and their stock price keeps increasing. And at some future date, whenever, maybe 50 years, 20 years, 10 years later, they'll just sell the requisite amount of shares and pay the debt off. And at that point of time, it's just the capital gains on the shares. And in America, as elsewhere, capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than your regular income.
Exactly.
So for most people who earn salaries, they pay a lot of tax to the government. And billionaires who basically get away with this kind of stuff, they pay nothing.
It's only the capital gain.
Yeah. So what these guys said is, we will have every year, we will have something called a mark to market. So every year on a certain date, we will see what the price of your share is and what the price of the share was last year. And whatever the gain is, you have to pay the tax as if you had actually sold the tax, sold the shares. So if you don't have liquid cash, you'll actually have to sell the shares and then pay the. So this thing was, obviously very unpopular with the billionaires. They were really upset. And for years and years and years, they've been getting away without paying a dime. So Elon Musk said that, Bernie Sanders said something. So Elon Musk said, "Oh, I didn't even know you were alive." It's like he's completely, So that was the thing about, and it was, there was one senator named Ron Wyden, I think, who proposed this. He was a Democrat. He is a Democrat. And it was shot down by another Democrat senator named Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin, So just to give you a bit of background on this, on the politics, just give a brief overview of the political situation right now. The United States Senate is basically right now, it consists of 100 people, right? And 100 people, so basically the Senate is currently 50-50, right? 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. So if everyone's voting on party lines, it's a tie. And because the Democrats hold and in case of the tie goes to the vice president. And the vice president clearly is Kamala Harris, who's a Democrat. So the reason, so therefore now if the Democrats want to pass anything, they need every single Democrat to vote for it.
Yeah.
That's where a person like Joe Manchin and there's another senator called Kyrsten Sinema. The two of these guys are, they are moderates or sort of more middle the line Democrats, not like hardcore Democrats. So they tend to hold the whole process hostage, saying that my vote will prevent pretty much any legislation from going through.
Yeah.
That's where Joe Manchin seems to have a lot of power for just being one senator, because he's that decisive vote that prevents it from making 50-50. Just give you that background.
So that's the whole thing. And that's why I thought it would be a nice topic for us to discuss, because it's one of the most beautiful topics. It is somebody else's problem, right? So there's nothing as beautiful as somebody else's problem. So we on Simplified are going to decide whether the American billionaires need to pay for the privilege of living in America or not. So I wish we carried that vote and we would say that. And we would have Elon Musk and the bunch crawling. But one thing I have to say about Elon Musk, this is what I read somewhere, and I have reason to believe that is true. Elon Musk is a very different kind of a guy. He's like very spaced out. He's weird. And he's measuring. So he's like we discussed everything. We discussed this topic in the last episode about things going south, environmentally speaking, right? Ecologically speaking. And Elon Musk believes that it's beyond redemption. So Elon Musk's technological solution to this is to go to Mars. So he says nothing is going to happen on Earth. Let's all go to Mars. So everything that happens, everything that happens to him, everything that he does, everything that his people do is always measured in terms of whether that gets us closer to going to Mars or not. So now, if the US government wants to take $20 billion from him, or $50 billion, or whatever it might be, that makes going to Mars a little more distant. So he's upset about that. So he calls these people the takers. He calls himself the maker, right? So they're makers and they're takers. And there is some amount of justice in that, because all states, they're all predatory in nature. So there are a bunch of people who demand, an arbitrarily decided share of your income. And you have no say in how they spend it. You have literally no say. So they'll take all of that and decide that, a particular politician needs a big plane, or he needs a big house, or he needs a convoy of 27 vehicles. Right now, I don't really understand why, they need to travel in convoys. He's just another guy. But yes, they do. And we pay all of that. So till recently, we were paying for Air India as well. Now that's getting So the point is that we don't have a say in that. So to that extent, I understand why Musk is upset.
Yeah.
Musk is handing over all that cash which he earned, and it's not getting him any closer to going to Mars. So that's his point of view.
Yeah, but the craziest thing about Elon Musk is not that he wants to take humanity to Mars. It is that he famously doesn't believe in marketing and won't spend even $1 on advertising.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So so he has to create all of the content for himself.
For his own this thing. Yeah.
So if you look at it, he is the walking, talking ad for everything Tesla and stuff like that. So very famously, he doesn't, I think I'm right, that he doesn't have a marketing agency or doesn't spend any dollar on advertising.
But he does also, he does it with the sort of Elon, which is very impressive.
Elon
Musk. You should call him Elon. He's very impressive.
I mean, whatever, he creates enough content for everyone, right? But one interesting thing someone pointed was that how he, basically speaks like this to Bernie Sanders, but in China, where he has legit business interests, he will go grovel and crawl at the feet of the party.
See, this is where it's at, right? Like, it's almost this, like, there was this time, at least a couple of years ago, where Elon Musk was this, like, he was basically Tony Stark, right? He could do no wrong. He was like this super do-gooder, eccentric, superstar billionaire.
Who could do no wrong. Yeah. And he was like, everything he touched turned out to be a success. Yeah. And then when stuff started coming out, right? So there was this thing about Solar City, if I remember rightly. Is that what it was called? So the Solar City was a company which was founded by his cousins. Okay. And the idea was his. He said we should build solar panel roofs. We did an episode also on this. He wanted to make roofs. He wanted to make roads paved with solar panels or some such thing. And the whole company, they tried to make roofing and all. It wasn't a sound business model. They had severe cash flow problems. They couldn't sell. Nothing could happen. And he just went in and bought that entire company. Okay, and sort of made his cousins rich, and he took all that into Tesla.
Right.
And he called it Gigafactory or something. Now he's called something else. And the Tesla shareholders are pissed about it because their share prices dropped. You just take somebody's bust company and this company. Yeah. But he just talked his way out of it. I think he was restrained in some way. They told him you couldn't talk on Twitter, or there was some restriction about that. Yeah. So eventually, Tesla, the price went down a bit, and then it started going up again. So that's Elon Musk for you.
But and also I think there was some study recently or something where the UN or someone basically said if Elon Musk gives $6.2 billion, we can solve world hunger or something. Mm-hmm. And he actually went on Twitter and said, I am happy to give it if you can solve world hunger and have a transparent process for it.
So that seemed like it was a promising conversation, but I mean, that's where, right, it seemed like such a movie moment, forget movie moment. There's this urban myth that said that when I was a kid, there used to be this urban myth saying that Ratan Tata had offered to fix all of India's poverty if instead of Gandhi, they put his face on the money. We used to talk about this in school or some shit like that. Like, there was this crazy shit about that. So this seems like such an urban myth, like, oh, I'll solve everything. But actually, the devil comes down in the details. And I mean, words are, as we have immense.
No, but his point was that you guys are extremely inefficient, which is why I want to, do good for the world in my own way. Like Naren said, take us to Mars or whatever, right? So in that context, his point is that if you're taking money away from me, you're hurting humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
That's his point.
justifying it. I'm just saying that.
No,
Yeah.
and we can actually see this there. To draw a parallel also, you can see it to some extent. So I was just reading and I was watching a documentary about Afghanistan, the entire US occupation of Afghanistan part. And the one thing that the US did was their classic way of rebuilding. I mean, to be fair, they did try to invest in rebuilding, but they did that with utter disregard or lack of knowledge for the local way things work. And their solution was to throw money at problems, right? So they were like, we're going to throw dollars. And what that did was it helped create warlords.
Yes.
Like, who had a lot of power and a lot of money. And at the end of the day, the problems, they were just oppressing their people in a better way and created a larger problem for the US, which over a period of time they realized was entirely untenable. Because once these warlords, because the warlords are obviously they'll support the US till they have the money, and then later the Taliban started coming in and they started turning towards them. So eventually they just created a massive mess. And now they have they've inserted more weapons and money into the system.
This reminds me of somebody had mentioned America is like a large friendly dog in a very small room. So it keeps wagging its tail and try to be friendly. And all it does is it knocks over priceless pieces of furniture and breaks them. That's all it does.
Yeah. So philosophically on the billionaires tax, right? I mean, ideally, if you look at like a corporate structure or the corporate world in general, there is a ceiling to the hierarchy you can reach. Like you can become CEO and MD, but there's nothing beyond that. You can't become grand wizard of the country or something like that. Right? But in terms of earnings and revenue, there is no ceiling set, which means that in some senses, it becomes a metric for you to aspire for more, although it doesn't improve the quality of anything you do or anyone around you as well, right? So, I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems absurd that anyone would want more than X amount of money, right? The problem is, as a society, there's nothing, or as a capitalistic economy, there's nothing that's defined as a ceiling for where you've reached, where you've defeated the ultimate boss. Right?
Exactly.
So
I have a theory and view on that, and we'll discuss that after this break. So see you on the other side of this break.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. In the kickoff episode of Think Fast, our hosts Varun Dugirala and Suchita Salwan give you their hot takes on all things trending. Whether it's the Paytm IPO fallout, Taylor Swift's re-releases, or the latest season of Shark Tank India, do check it out. On Misconduct, Raghavi and Nisha take us through the story of Santokh bin Jadeja, aka the godmother of Porbandar. At her peak in the 80s and 90s, her gang had over 500 registered criminal cases. Are social networks just content moderating platforms, or are they true blue publishers? Dive deeper into this debate with Siddharth on Smarter with Sid. On Marathi Khidkitun, Dr. Rajiv and Manik Deshmukh talk about differently able people who emerged as achievers. And speaking of Varun Dugirala, this week on Advertising is Dead, he is joined by content creator and gamer myth Path. They discuss his journey as a creator and the experience that came from it. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, do remember that many of our shows are available on YouTube. You can check that out by going to our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where we have a list of all of our various YouTube channels. Finally, we'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, HDFC Mutual Fund, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Hi, welcome back to Simplified, where we are giving you pearls of wisdom for no tax at all. Now on to Naresh theory.
We are discussing
billionaire.
So this is what happens in companies, right? A stellar example are these FMCG companies where the owner is a large multinational corporation outside the country. Okay. And you have a bunch of this applies to foreign banks as well. So I know a lot of my friends work there, and they keep getting all these astronomical pay packages. The guys at the top, not at the bottom, for basically doing nothing. So if you see one of these banks, okay, foreign banks in India, they really there's nothing. I mean, you just go and sleep in the office and come back. Nothing changes in the bottom line. The reason is, if you don't pay yourself a salary, okay, it's all going back to the owner, and the owner really doesn't care, right? So you pay yourself a salary, but you are at the top and you pay yourself a salary. You have to pay other people a little bit as well. Otherwise, you'll have insubordination in the ranks. So everybody starts getting. This is what happens in India. In the US, most oftentimes what happens is that the CEO is only answerable to the shareholders. So Milton Friedman famously said that the firm, the company's duty, the CEO's duty is to maximize the value for the shareholders. That's all. The corporation has no social value, nothing. The CEO has no social response, nothing. You just maximize the value for the shareholder, and that should take care of everything. And in America, that does happen. So in publicly traded corporations where no one group owns a lot of shares, people do get kicked out. If they don't perform well, they get voted out and somebody else becomes the CEO. And in many new age companies, structure that has evolved is such that it's virtually impossible to kick the CEO out.
Yeah.
And at this point of time, this guy can basically pay himself whatever he likes, and no one's going to question him at all. Yeah. And that is what is basically rankles, right? So you have people that there's this. And a good case here is this lady named Marissa Mayer, who took over Yahoo and sort of, chopped it into a nice schema and destroyed it, and took out some, 20, 30, 50 million, huge severance pay, and went away.
Right.
So, and I'm pretty sure the way she did it, she paid much lower tax than any of the employees would have. So I'm sort of, I'm seeing sort of sense in this billionaire tax as well. It's in the interest of equity, right? So taxation is not just about revenue. It's also about equity. It's about being fair to people. And
but it's easy for us to see that perspective because we'll never end up there, right?
Yeah. There's no danger of us ending.
And that's why I was asking, like, for them, if there is a construct predefined which you have to follow, then it makes it easier, right? It's suddenly like, now you're bringing it in and then I'll get affected kind of scenario. And I think a good metric would be you're allowed to keep only as much money as you can count in a month. So you can keep counting, and till the point that we reach 31 days, we'll take away the rest.
You should be. There should be a law saying that the CEO should be paid in only $100 bills, and he should sort of go count it and take it out, and he has to, at the exit, there's a note counting machine. So if the count is not correct, then the money goes back. So these guys will really count and make it. Yeah. So then he's screwed.
It's very counterintuitive. Anyway.
This is where it's at also, right? Like, I was having this conversation with another friend of mine, and we were like discussing in fact, Naren, we were talking about that one of the examples that you had given during demonetization. I don't know whether it was you or someone else, but about how right after demonetization, a factory owner called all his employees and paid them 3 months' salary in advance using demonetized notes. So he could get rid of them. And we were just discussing the morality of that particular situation. And that conversation kind of led to a point where it said that, there is reaping the rewards of your investment into your personal growth and into your, and how much, once you're trained to be a businessman and a successful one, you've been trained to effectively be a killer, right? You've been trained to be kind of like ruthless in the way you will do business, and you're always looking for profit because that hustle culture has gotten you there. But then also about the morality of the thing. So the point is, where do you draw the line? Where does one say that, okay, here is where I will start being moral about how I'm going to do things, versus here is where I'm going to, but this is where I'm going to exploit people? Because again, in an exploitative system, is it just limited to people who you can see in front of you who you are exploiting? Is that wrong, or versus is it just wrong to, like, if I'm taking part in a stock market, is that also immoral in some way? That's where the question kind of like muddies.
There's a larger sociological problem here, right? So since we evolved from hunter-gatherers into settled societies, the constant search has been for a structure which would ensure fairness.
Right.
And that has been elusive. So really haven't, even in very, very, very early societies, it was very difficult. There were a few which somewhat managed, but overall doesn't. You will always get an individual who will rise up to a position of power and then do anything to maintain that position.
Exactly.
And everything sort of flows from that. And then when mercantilism took off in the 15th, 16th centuries in Europe, that's what happened. Merchants started making a lot of money and they wanted to hang on to their money. And then they created companies, they created stuff. Every structure, every institution that they created was basically designed to help them hold on to their cash, hold on to their money.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we are all suffering because, and it's in everybody's interest. For example, all the three of us today, if any of us gets a chance to, found a company and make a bit of money, you are going to try and maximize use every law and loophole that exists in order to increase your wealth and get away without paying anybody.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but I think it's a lot of personal choice, right? Like the fact that again, we get together every week to record a podcast is not for money, right? So individually, people need to have a threshold beyond which it doesn't make sense for them, right? And that realization usually comes very late for, let's say, billionaires. But the problem then is allied to like the halo effect, which is when if you do something well, you're automatically assumed to be good at everything else. That particular person gets a messiah complex, saying, now I have been successful by whatever reason. Now I have to save the world. So let me try to do that. So, I think it's a problem of thought, because the structure currently tells you to maximize X doesn't mean that's the only way, right? It's a question of saying, how do you measure what makes sense and where do you stop? Just because numbers go on endlessly doesn't mean you keep chasing it endlessly.
No, also there is the other way, right? So we have this observation bias, right? So we've only see people who are at the top of the heap. And the only way they can get at the top of the heap is if they are blindly, they're blind in their pursuit of money. Otherwise, they will not come to the top of the heap. You have really like a million really nice guys who are somewhere buried in the middle, who are rich by everybody's standards, but who have said, I've got enough and doing good to the society at large. And you never see them because they are not counted. You only see people. That's why I have this. It is a Shenoy's law, right? So every rich person is an asshole. And if a person is not an asshole, he is not rich. So it's a completely locked argument.
Yeah, but I think we also have like a self-selected audience who will nod along to this. To us, Naren, you're the pinnacle of achievement because you've been interviewed on the seen and the unseen, which I think is a higher goal than, being monetarily rich.
Correct. You have achieved richness in thought and status.
Yeah, I think we should define the seen and the unseen number, like Kevin Bacon number, and we've all moved up one level thanks to Naren. So, in case you are missing the context, the seen and the unseen is a wonderful podcast by Amit Verma on which Naren was on to share his life wisdom for 4 hours, and it's brilliant. Please check it out.
And I had the additional distinction of being the least distinguished guest of Seen and the Unseen. So all the people on Seen and the Unseen are economists or political figures and people who have written books and thinkers and intellectuals, and then they have me. But that's
the other part, right?
Yeah.
See, imposter syndrome is another way to identify actually like accomplished people as opposed to just people who are wealthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, right? Like, unlike Elon Musk, who has become too smug for Bernie Sanders giving clapbacks on Twitter and stuff like that. The self-deprecation actually is your mark of greatness.
Yeah, I know self-deprecation. Here the self-deprecation is well deserved also, so well merited. So, but yeah, I mean that was fun. So it's a terrific, and I've been a regular listener of Seen and the Unseen. And one thing I like about Amit Verma is that, and I experienced this firsthand too, that he really has a conversation. So he never butts in, he never forces. And there are somebody pointed out on Twitter that at one point of time he asked me what my favorite books are, and I'm telling him about a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and the guy is like, "Dude, you don't think Amit Verma has read it?" I said, yeah. Now that you say, I realize. And it turned out that Amit had actually written a long post on his India Uncut as well on that, on the various. But I think he keeps talking about it all the time, and yeah, but that's how it works. But he's really, he puts you at ease, and he just lets you roll, and it was an awesome experience.
Yeah. But going back to the topic at hand, right? I'm guessing this is an interesting topic that Amit would have discussed, because he famously is all for like unhinged capitalism. At least that's my take. But
so he
also
has,
like a well-rounded
so he basically, he goes back to what he calls first principles, right? So his first principles are consent and free, whatever, freedom of action. Everyone has right over their own actions, and they have consent and things like that. So and he then derives everything from those first principles. And the problem with those first principles and deriving things from first principles is society is horribly complex, and there are a lot of hidden barriers of privilege, and there's a lot of things, and then there are situations where things are very cruel. So it doesn't, everything doesn't pan out as neatly. It's like, if any of you have done calculus, and when they give you differential equations in your course, they're very neatly, so you need to know the trick. And once you know the trick, you know how to factorize the equation, you know how to split the variable, you know what kind of substitute. There are UV substitution techniques, there are different kinds of stuff. If you do all those techniques right, you get a beautifully organized answer. It will be some polynomial in X, and then you factorize that and you get to everything is fine. In real life, that never happens. You never get nice variable separable differential equations. It's a holy mess. And that is why whenever you're trying to do any engineering in real life today, you use computers and numerical methods to solve differential equations. You cannot solve them in exact ways.
Yeah.
And economics is a lot like that. So you can't really solve economics exactly. You cannot find nice sort of principled solutions. Yeah, nice clean answers. Yeah. And that's a point that he acknowledges well also. So there's almost never is somebody a complete villain or a complete hero. Yeah. There are shades of gray and everything. And that's what makes life interesting as well. So
yeah. And I think the third principle is that the state is a parasite, right? And for every dollar or rupee spent by the state, it could have been spent better by
that's true. So I recently, someone was telling me that it was a great thing that the government kept petrol prices high, despite the fact that the prices needn't have been. They just kept increasing the taxes, and they keep increasing. So the two benefits that person pointed out: one was it increased the revenue for the government, and the second was it discouraged the use of petrol. So conceivably, since petrol and diesel is so expensive, you would not go on unessential work. So in both counts, is it not good for the country?
Right.
And the point of someone like Amit would be that had that money been, so now that money has been snatched out from the hands of the person spending it. Had it not been spent, that person would have spent it on something else that he or she would choose, and it would have taken the economy in different ways. Why does the government believe that having taken that money to fund itself to do things, it will do things better than people would do for themselves? So those are questions which are absolutely insoluble and
Yeah.
This is also the basis of the conversation about minimum income, right? The minimum income.
Universal basic
Universal
income.
basic income.
Universal basic UBI, universal basic income. So, I mean, that's the argument saying that taxation is a very imperfect and corrupt way of actually exacting public funds. It would be much better in the hands of the people themselves. And I mean, it is where the argument is at right now. But that it is also I see UBI working out in the system of capitalism. UBI itself is a potential of becoming extremely corrupt unto itself.
How so?
I feel that it's in the system of capitalism where you're giving the people the money directly. They are going to continue. They are, because of the way the system incentivizes these billionaires and these the capitalists to be, the capitalist system will evolve itself to extract the money from them and make the capitalists richer.
That too is going to flow to that. So what you're saying is, regardless of how much money you give to the guys at the bottom of the pyramid, it'll all flow up to the top.
It will flow up to the top in some way. So, I mean, it is a more fundamental problem of the core capitalist system and these. I mean, the thing is, if it was these guys are already far too entrenched to kind of like make a radical change. Like UBI is not going to suddenly like break this power structure and make these guys like suddenly create an egalitarian system right now.
And so the problem is there are problems elsewhere, and unless those problems are solved, you're saying that UBI may not achieve what it
by itself is not a silver bullet. And like you said, this is a far too messy and interconnected system that you can fix one problem and that's going to create a ripple effect and solve everything else. Which is what, right? Like yesterday I was driving with this. I was in a cab from Gurgaon to Delhi, long cab ride, and the cab guy. And here the cab guys are all very interested in talking politics. So this guy is like fully talking about it, and like at one point everyone seems to revert to like saying that, ek aadmi agar jo aayega, jo theek se kaam karega.
Wow, this is classic Indian.
I call it the Nayak complex. Right? There was that movie Nayak, right? With that with Anil Kapoor, who was like this guy who cleaned up the whole system. I was like, ek aadmi agar jo aayega aur karega na, to sab theek ho jayega. And I'm like, it's far too complex for one man to fix this right now. Like there's no one man complex that's going to fix anything.
But it's very insightful, because that is what we believe. We as a people, it's not just Indians. I think it's far more widespread than that. We believe that a right leader or a great leader can lead us out of the mess. And oftentimes it's just a chimera. It's never going to happen.
It'll be amazing if some guy like that comes and gives us all 15 lakhs in our account or something. But anyway, so just back to this billionaire's point, right? Is the idea is that fundamentally everyone would agree to it, but I mean, most of us would, right? Because tax the rich. Is it like for the benefits that it would come out of it, because those are intraceable because it goes into the government? Or is it just a karmic thing saying, this got so rich, he deserves to be taken down a notch, right? So in some senses, I think we are all uncomfortable living in a world where cruel people can do anything they want and they'll profit till the end of life, and there is no afterlife. So basically, that shatters your whole construct of life itself, right? So in some senses, I mean, I would think that we'd like to say that it'll give benefit to so many people, but in some senses, it seems fairly karmic to say.
There's a lot of Schadenfreude there, right? Like, I mean, I see this guy sitting on his pedestal, and the only thing that's what I was very surprised when the question that you started with, Naren, and I didn't see this poll, but that poll about should I pay it off with selling my stock, knowing how Twitter works and knowing how the Schadenfreude is, I would have expected a more like a at least an 80-20 split, if not more, at that point. Because that is where the way the question itself is structured. One question says, and that's what was the Brexit thing as well, right? One of the reasons why people said that people voted for Brexit was that people always vote for something that causes action. So the question was, should UK remain in the European Union or should UK leave the European Union? So a lot of people were like, I just want to see something happen. So that's why they voted for leave.
Yeah.
Like remain is boring, it's status quo.
But the Musk problem was everyone who follows Musk on Twitter has Tesla shares, so they didn't want him to sell it. So
that is true as well.
That's what tipped
that
it
was
back.
the majority of the vote.
As of this time, it's gone down to some 10 or 15%, I believe, 15% or something.
Like 15% which way?
Down. It's gone down. So because this guy sold some $2 billion, $1 billion, something worth of it. And he's going to sell $20 billion of it. But the thing is, a lot of people believe that I have friends in the US and they all they're buying at decline. So every time it goes down a little bit, they buy some more Tesla shares.
Buy on dips.
BTFD.
Yeah. So this was fun. And I don't know how to end this, but I think I'm going to say stay safe, stay untaxed, and stay simplified. See you next week. Yeah.
Bye.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders and change makers from across business, media, marketing and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app or wherever you get your podcast from.